Ever wonder why your thank you emails rarely get a reply? You're not alone. What if your D365 could send a perfectly timed check-in, a tailored product tip, and an honest feedback request, all triggered by real customer actions? Let's move beyond one-off emails and start designing dynamic customer journeys that actually adapt. You'll see Power Automate in action, building connected workflows that keep conversations going and customers coming back. Why one-off emails fall flat, the limits of basic automation. If you've ever set up an automated thank you email and then checked your analytics, you probably know the feeling. There's that brief spike. Someone fills out a form, completes a purchase, or submits a support ticket, and instantly your CRM fires off a "we've received your feedback" or a "thank you for your order." It's simple, it's tidy, it's pretty forgettable. The reality is most companies settle for these out-of-the-box triggers because they're straightforward to implement. The system does exactly what it was told to do, right on schedule, and you can tick the automated communication box for the project plan. But here's where things go sideways. That one-size-fits-all message is as flat as the old "do not reply" inbox. Customers have picked up on this. They recognize the pattern, and instead of feeling like you care, it signals that their interaction has reached a dead end. They're not just ignoring your email, they're closing the book on that conversation. In a world where everyone's inbox is stacked with generic confirmations and bland follow-ups, your brand starts to blend into the noise. That's the catch with basic automation. It's great for clearing your to-do list, horrible for sparking any kind of real engagement. The funny thing is, you'll sometimes find two different D365 setups pointed at the very same goal, acknowledging a customer's action. One will churn out the default "thanks for your submission" mail and never take another step. The other might send that initial thank you, but days later, it follows up with a tip based on what they bought, or an invitation to connect with a support agent if they get stuck. It's not surprising which one actually gets replies. In the first scenario, replies are nearly non-existent, just a faint trickle you might not even notice. In the second, people actually start conversations. Instead of one and done, you see scattered back and forths, extra questions, genuine appreciations, or even feedback that makes its way back into your product or service. Now, let's look at the data, because those differences aren't just gut checks. The numbers are brutal for teams relying on static one-off automations. Multiple studies, including a detailed review by Campaign Monitor, have shown that generic transactional emails see open and reply rates almost half of what personalized sequenced campaigns achieve. Response rates for the simple thank you template can hover under 10%, while even basic follow-up sequences climb closer to 20 or 30. That's before you add in any actual personalization. And then there's the bigger picture, customer retention. Picture two support encounters. In scenario one, the support case closes and the customer never hears from you again. In scenario two, they get a tailored message a few days later. Maybe it's a request for quick feedback, but it could also offer answers to questions they didn't even know they had. Maybe it highlights a new feature based on their recent problem. In the space of one thoughtful interaction, you've shifted the dynamic. Now you're not just a ticketing system, you're a partner. This isn't theoretical. Gartner's research found that brands who kept conversations going after the first point of contact saw retention climb by nearly a third. That's not nice to have. That's the kind of lift that turns retention into real revenue. Their analysis points to context-aware, ongoing communication as the critical difference. Customers respond to signals that the business hasn't moved on without them. There's another layer to this. Once you start to see automation as more than just a technical process, a sort of digital chore, you spot how easy it is to misuse it. A lot of companies treat it as a checkbox on a project requirements list. Customer completed purchase, send email. They automate strictly to offload manual work, not to build a relationship. The problem is treating automation as an end in itself leads to silence. The customer's journey essentially ends with that transaction. You get a brief micro-conversion maybe, but you miss out on any dialogue. The real culprit isn't the automation tool itself, it's the absence of a feedback loop. One-off automations are like setting your phone to send a birthday text to everyone in your contacts. Doesn't matter if you spoke last week or haven't heard from each other in years. When there's no mechanism for listening, adapting, or following up, all you're really doing is broadcasting. You're not building a relationship, you're sending a memo. And it's a shame, because D365 and tools like Power Automate have far more potential than most people wring out of them. The issue is hardly ever with the automation engine itself. The limits are self-imposed when Flows are only set up to handle the rote moments, and no one thinks about the natural next step. The good news, if you start framing your automations as ongoing conversations instead of chores to automate away, you finally address that silence. That brings us to the bigger question. Which triggers should you actually use to turn D365 from a blunt autoresponder into a real engagement machine? The answer is buried in the details of your workflows, not just in recording transactions, but in interpreting signals all along the customer's life cycles. So let's get practical. It's time to break down the exact D365 events that can actually fuel smarter, more adaptive conversations, triggering conversations, not just messages, the right D365 events. If you've worked with D365 for more than a week, you've probably built flows that trigger on all the usual suspects. Someone completes a web form, places a first order, or gets a case resolved. Do this enough times, and it gets almost automatic. Fill out a field, touch a certain entity, trigger a message. It works, but it barely scratches the surface of what's actually possible if you pay attention to richer signals hiding in your CRM data. The big win isn't in sending more messages, it's in sending the right one at the right moment for the right reason. The difference? With a little more effort, you can stop flooding inboxes and start nudging real conversations. Let's not sugarcoat it. D365 is packed with event triggers people overlook. Most folks treat case created or opportunity won as the obvious choices, but when you poke around, you see details that tell a lot more about what's happening with the customer. Consider status changes. You're not just alerted when the case closes, but each time it's escalated, handed to a new agent, or flagged for review. Even subtle things like a custom field update after an agent logs a call are signals you can act on. If a customer satisfaction rating dips on their third support interaction in a month, that's not just a stat. It should kick off a new experience, not another recycled template. But getting this right is tricky. There's a line between being attentive and annoying. If you use every event as a trigger, you risk sending out a wall of emails that come off as spammy. Customers don't want to be pestered every time they interact with your system. They want relevance. So timing, context, and specificity become your guardrails. You might have 100 events sitting in your CRM every day, but only a handful are worth acting on. That's where a bit of thoughtful design pays off. Imagine a customer who just closed a support case. Are you sending them a generic immediate satisfaction survey, or is there more value in following up with a resource, maybe a quick guide or tip backed by what caused their original issue? Or do you wait a couple of days, then gently check how things are going? The best experience usually weaves all three into a small logical sequence. A poorly timed survey can feel like homework. A timely tip can feel like service. Getting the mix right is pure trial and error, but you rarely need guesswork. D365 lets you segment these events down to the details that matter. It's a similar story with purchases. The difference between triggering an email after a first purchase and after a second, third, or 10th isn't subtle. If someone's coming back for more, their expectations, loyalty, and the way they want to be spoken to all shift. Maybe that first timer needs onboarding or reassurance. A returning customer, they might need proactive outreach about account perks, new products, or exclusive offers. This is where D365's event and field data comes alive. You can pick out signals that tell you exactly where someone is in their journey and tune your flows accordingly. Segmentation is your best friend here. Instead of hammering everyone with the same template, you can build flows around purchase frequency, case type, or even the products or services they care about most. If someone just bought a product from one category for the first time, maybe you offer a tip or accessory. If they filed 3 support requests for the same product type, you might want to invite them to a user webinar instead of just sending more apologies. The tailoring is only as good as the data, and D365 provides plenty of hooks to latch onto. It's remarkable how many setups ignore this, blasting valued customer emails to people at totally different stages. And this isn't just theory. There's a retailer out there who put these ideas to the test with D365. Instead of nudging customers after every transaction, they set up a check-in email rule that fires only after 3 consecutive purchases. Not just any purchase, but a sequence that signals someone is genuinely engaged. They didn't send these check-ins to everyone, and the content didn't look like a form letter. The result, their rate of repeat customers jumped by 22%. When customers feel seen instead of processed, they stick around. If the fear is over communicating, Power Automate's conditional triggers take the edge off. You can set up checks to avoid sending an email if they've received a similar message in the past 30 days, or create exceptions for VIPs who need another cadence entirely. These aren't just technical features. They keep your flows from backfiring. Nobody wants to feel like another data point in a campaign series. Treating your CRM as a living system, picking up signals and responding accordingly turns automation from a megaphone into a dialogue. You get fewer ignored emails, fewer unsubscribes, and more back and forths that actually help both sides. Next, let's dig into how you build these flows in Power Automate without ending up buried in a spaghetti mess of triggers and actions. Building dynamic flows, personalization, logic, and guardrails in Power Automate. If you've ever wondered why some automated emails spark a genuine response while others find their way to the spam folder, it almost always traces back to how those flows are set up in Power Automate. Out-of-the-box automations are quick to launch and good enough for basic notifications, but they miss the little touches that make customers feel understood. If you're using the default template, every customer gets the exact same reply, regardless of what they actually did or what history they have with your business. It's no wonder people start ignoring these completely. They're missing the most basic ingredient: relevance. Real engagement doesn't come from blasting the same message to every contact. It comes from combining the right logic, the right data, and a healthy sense of restraint. Let's dig into a concrete example, because theory only gets you so far. Imagine a support case closes in D365. The generic approach is to send a thank you for your business note and call it a day. But what happens when you layer in a bit more from your CRM? By pulling in the case type, related product, and support history, you can craft an email that sounds like it was written directly for that customer. Start not just with a personalized thank you, but then add a section with tailored FAQs pulled from cases similar to theirs. If their support ticket was about a specific feature, you follow up with additional tips about that area. And right after, drop in a satisfaction survey that names the actual support agent and references their resolution times. Suddenly, this isn't just a form letter. It feels like an actual follow-up from a company that's paying attention. The difference here is all about data mapping and branching logic in Power Automate. You don't have to build a complex AI-driven flow to add real value. Just pull the right fields into your email body. Pull in customer names, but also recent purchase history, support preferences, favorite products from completed surveys, or anniversary dates with your service. The logic doesn't have to be complicated. A single condition, like if this is the customer's first support case, offer a friendly onboarding link instead of a technical FAQ, can make the entire experience warmer. Instead of one script fits all, the content, tone, and even the sender, think a named account rep, not just support team, can change based on how you branch those conditions. Conditional branching is where the flow shifts from transaction to relationship. Think about separating first-time buyers from your long-term VIPs. A first-time buyer probably needs more context, maybe a simple walkthrough, a friendly next steps guide, or a discount on their next order. Someone who's already interacted with you 5 or 10 times needs something a little different, maybe priority support, early access to new features, or access to a more advanced help resource. Power Automate's branching means you can divide flows not just by event type, but by who the customer is and what's likely to matter to them most right now. Of course, there's a risk that comes with more targeting, too many emails landing in quick succession. And that's where building in communication guardrails becomes more than a nice to have. Power Automate lets you set up suppression logic. So if the customer just received something else from your team in the last week, today's message gets skipped. You can dial in frequency caps. For instance, don't allow more than 2 automated emails in any 7-day period, or pause any surveys if a major incident is still being resolved. These aren't just crowd control tactics. They actually keep your well-intentioned outreach from backfiring. A B2B company learned this the hard way. Subscribers were bailing after yet another check-in email landed within hours of each other. When they added frequency caps and began sending context-aware content only when there was real value, their unsubscribe rate dropped by 40%. It wasn't a technical breakthrough. It was just thoughtful communication powered by a few conditions in the flow. It's easy to underestimate how much adding a couple of branches or suppression steps can change customer perception. You go from being viewed as a faceless system to a provider that knows when to reach out and when to hold back. Instead of pings that interrupt the customer's day, you send messages that fit into into their journey. It's not the volume of emails, it's the quality and the timing. Personalization isn't just a feature, it's the difference between landing your message and landing in the trash. The more you pull from D365 into your flows, real details, recent activity, even small gestures like naming the support agent, the closer you get to something that passes the "did a real person send this" test. Power Automate is flexible enough to let you build logic without getting stuck in "if this, then that" overwhelm. The best flows don't just react, they anticipate, adapt, and remember. With every smart condition, every mapped field, and every thoughtful cap on frequency, your automation goes from feeling canned to feeling conversational. So once you've set up these adaptive flows, how do you keep them relevant? The answer is feedback, real engagement data, fed back into your system to refine what works and what needs a rethink. Closing the loop, turning customer feedback into continuous improvement. The truth is, most automation stops the moment an email is sent. Once that satisfaction survey or follow-up message lands in the customer's inbox, the workflow finishes and the system moves on. But that's the point where things actually get interesting, when people reply, leave a rating, or ignore you completely. There's a real opportunity here that most teams miss. Using the data from those replies to make every interaction smarter the next time. D365 and Power Automate aren't just delivery engines. They can actually listen, adjust, and personalize if you build in those feedback loops. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a typical workflow owner for a minute. You design a nice satisfaction survey that pops after a support case closes, asking customers how the interaction went. If they click a star rating or write a comment, what actually happens to that data? In a lot of setups, it just lands in a dashboard, nobody checks, or gets lumped into an export for some quarterly review. The customer speaks, but the system doesn't respond. It's like talking to a brick wall. It doesn't matter how friendly your script sounded if nothing changes on the other side. That's what makes so many automated journeys feel empty. The reality is, if your flows can't adapt to what people are telling you in real time, you're stuck with something just as rigid as a batch and blast campaign from 2010, just with fancier branding. All the dynamic triggers and personalization fields in the world don't matter if you drop the ball after you get a response. Think about the customer's experience after they submit negative feedback. If your system doesn't follow up with a genuine attempt to fix things, you're not closing a loop, you're just collecting complaints. And when you let positive feedback drift by without acknowledgement, you're missing out on organic referrals, brand advocates, and the easiest chance to nudge someone toward another action. Here's where these platforms start to earn their keep. Picture a low survey score coming in after a case closes. That rating can instantly fire a new support follow-up from a real agent, ideally, who checks in, offers to jump on a call, or escalates the issue if needed. No more waiting for someone on the back end to run a report and notice unhappy customers weeks later. On the flip side, if someone leaves 5 stars, why not use that as a trigger for a referral request, a review prompt, or a well-placed cross-sell? With a couple of conditions in your existing flow, each response becomes fuel for the next step, not just a footnote. Feedback isn't just for dashboards. It's not something you pull for reporting twice a year to prove you care about voice of the customer. In the best run environments, those responses change what customers see, feel, and get from your business in real time. A SaaS provider running D365 ended up segmenting their entire customer base by satisfaction score. They noticed unhappy users needed extra onboarding and easy access to human help, while happy ones were game for advanced tips, upsells, or even beta invites. As soon as they tuned follow-up flows around actual survey results instead of static segments, they cut customer churn by 18% in just 6 months. It wasn't about writing warmer emails or tacking on extra follow-ups, but acting on what each client actually told them every time. Building in these learning loops means taking a closer look at what works and what makes people check out. That's where A/B testing steps into the picture. You can use feedback to test whether a different subject line or sending time gets more opens, or try 2 versions of post-case follow-ups to see if one actually sparks more replies. Instead of running experiments blind, you take the outcome, higher engagement, fewer complaints, even increased revenue, and feed it right back into the flow logic for the next round. Over time, your system becomes less set it and forget it and more like a living organism adapting at the pace your customers change. But all those improvements are hard to spot if you're not watching the right metrics. That's where plugging Power Automate's outputs into Power BI can actually make a big difference. With clear dashboards, you can see which automations get opened, which ones start actual conversations, and which fall flat. Maybe you notice that customers drop off after receiving too many messages in a month, or that survey requests soared when sent 2 days after a support case instead of right away. These feedback-driven tweaks don't just improve the numbers, they help you turn automation from a static pipeline into a cycle of ongoing improvement. It all adds up to a simple truth. The best automation never really finishes. Instead, it listens at every step, adjusts based on real user signals, and evolves into something better with each interaction. The technology is flexible enough. The barrier is rarely the tool, it's how you use the information coming back at you. So if you're ready to kick static email flows to the curb and build something that actually keeps the conversation moving, you have everything you need at your fingertips. Of course, all these pieces don't work in isolation. Pulling them together is where you start to see the real payoff. So let's look at how you can set up your own adaptive engagement loop from scratch. If you've ever watched your automated emails land with a thud, you're seeing the difference between static and adaptive automation in action. When your workflows only broadcast, people tune you out. If you're after more than just clicks, if you want customers who recognize the name in their inbox, your flows need to pay attention and shift based on each action. Build just one real feedback loop in D365 with Power Automate this week. Watch how the replies, customer sentiment, and next steps start to change. Most teams wait for quarterly reviews. You can see results after just a few thoughtful tweaks.